I'm going to move to my motion.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. Please be seated. And I trust in the moments you've had waiting for us to begin, you've had a chance to pay respects, as we do, to our First Nations friends. And I would like to start this evening with a bit of an announcement. This is the 30th anniversary of the West Vancouver Art Museum, formerly the West Vancouver Museum and Archives, and we celebrate this milestone and recognize the Art Museum's pivotal role in enriching our cultural landscape and fostering an appreciation of diverse forms of contemporary and historical art, design, and architecture in our community. The programming at the Art Museum this year presents an important opportunity to reflect on the institution's past and facilitate dialogue for the future. In celebration of the West Vancouver Art Museum's 30th anniversary, staff from the Art Museum and the District of West Vancouver's Parks team have collaborated to create a special planting on Taylor Way based on the work of art from the collection of BC Binning and called Merging Sides. And I hope everyone has an opportunity to see that beautiful floral display. In our closed meeting just before this meeting, members of council made the following appointments. First, to the library board for a 2-year term ending December 31st. And those people are Emma He, Willem Maris, Patricia Morris, and Helen Van Lee. And we thank all of the people who put their names forward to serve both for that position and also to our new planning committee, which council this evening appointed Russell Hollingsworth, our former director of planning, Steve Nichols, Rob Brown, Daniel Horolik, Mark Vaughn, Henry Wood, C.C. Yao, Linda Berger, and Don Milliken to be appointed to that new committee for a 2-year term. And I thank members of council, and I think there were a lot of people who applied, and it was extremely difficult going through all of the excellent applications. I should also just add that Councillor Lambert, who is not obviously physically with us tonight, is present via the Zoom type meeting. And we thank him for joining us from a very beautiful place. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please, Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I'd like to approve that July 8th, 2024 regular council meeting agenda be approved.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. And then if we could begin with our road safety update, and welcome. Thank you. Mr. O'Sullivan has been here on numerous occasions of recent covering these important topics for us.
Hopefully this report is a bit of a good news report today. It's it's a road safety update. It's looking at road safety in the district, and I hope that this will be an annual report that we'll deliver to council, and we'll continue to have good news with the report. The report's broken into 2 parts. The first part I'll talk about the data and what the collision data shows us in the district. And the second part will look at or identify the programs that we have in the district to try to further improve safety in the district. So first I'll talk about the data. And then in general, the data appears to show that the number of collisions and the collision risk in the district of West Vancouver is decreasing. It's the data that we're using is ICBC claims data. So there is the data is of all the claims that ICBC gets within the district. So it includes district roads as well as provincial roads within the district. So, and we find that our highest collision locations in the district are on the ministry roads. So when we look at some of the total data, the overall data, it's a little bit skewed because of the provincial highways that run through the district. the ICBC data claims data is also, a lot of it's self-reported, so at times it's a little bit difficult to understand the descriptions of what collision has occurred. And unfortunately, before we prepared this report, ICBC hadn't released its 2023 collision data. So we're looking back at 2018 to 2022. So we have a large timeline in there impacted by COVID. So to continually reduce the number of collisions within the district, for road safety programming, I believe we need to look at a data-driven program, and it must be a multidisciplinary approach. We need to look at education, engineering, enforcement, community development, and legislation as all methods to continue to reduce collisions within the district. These charts on the now are the total collisions within the district of West Vancouver. The graph on the left shows how in 2018 to 2019 collisions were decreasing slightly, and then when COVID hit, they dropped dramatically. And that's as everyone knows, there was quite a culture change when COVID hit. And since 2020, the number of collisions has slowly increased. But I think key points are that we're still approximately 30% less injury and fatal collisions in the district in 2022 versus 2018. Now, we're not sure if that's all COVID related, or is it partly cultural change, more people working from home, or is it just an anomaly in the data, or reflecting the variability in the data? So hopefully once we get the 2023 data from ICBC, we'll be a better, greater confidence as to what is happening with collisions within the district, whether they're decreasing or it's just an anomaly or variability in the data. The graph you see on the left, it's the same graph. It appears in other BC communities, Kamloops, Abbotsford, Victoria, Nanaimo, Saanich. Slow decrease in collisions before COVID, a large decrease in collisions at the start of COVID, and then a slow increase after the start of COVID. West Vancouver, when compared to other small municipalities in the Lower Mainland, we're about middle of the pack in terms of collisions per population or collisions per vehicle ownership. And again, some of this data, high-level data, you have to take a little bit of a grain of salt. Communities like Port Coquitlam, which their data would include the Maryhill Bypass, which has a high collision frequency. West Vancouver, we have included in our overall data is Highway 99 and Highway 1, which also can be high collision locations. So, but it gives a general trend that we're not the highest in the lower mainland, and we're not the lowest. White Rock, which is the lowest on this chart, could be it's the lowest because it doesn't have any provincial highways that run through it. So the high collision, high volume locations may be skewing the data a little bit. One other thing to take away from this data is not shown here, that 54% of injury and fatal collisions occur at 15% of the collision locations in the district. And that sort of highlights the project we're working on is the network screening program, where we identify the high collision locations in the district, and then we target mitigation measures to target the high types of collisions that are occurring. And so as opposed to a blanket, we're trying to target our responses to reduce the collisions. The next slide shows on the left pedestrian collisions per year. And similar to the overall vehicle collisions, we see that between 2018 and 2019, there was a 30% drop in the number of pedestrian collisions. And between 2018 and 2020, there was almost a 45% drop in the number of pedestrian collisions. So again, it's not clear whether that's an anomaly caused by COVID or if that's a variability in the data. Once we get the ICBC 2023 data, hopefully we'll have greater confidence as to if this is an ongoing trend or if it's just a variability in the data. And as expected, you can see on the bottom graph on the left, the pedestrian collisions occur most frequently in the darker months. When we look at the right-hand side, we see the cyclist collisions by year. The cyclist collisions have been relatively flat at about 11 collisions per year. They did go up the first year of COVID in 2020, We didn't have the opportunity to go and delve into the data to find out if there was any causes for that increase that we could see. And as expected, when we look at cyclist collisions by month, the greatest number of cyclist collisions occur in the summer. So the next slide, I was going to talk just about some of the safety programs that we have in the district to try to continue to reduce the collision risk within the district. The first is the school safety assessment program. This is an ongoing program where we meet with the schools and ask them what safety concerns they have around their school. And then we try to, with funding that council has afforded us, we look at ways of reducing collisions and improve walking, biking in and around the schools. Next, we have the traffic calming program, which was endorsed by council in March 2024. And this program focuses on reducing speed and shortcutting on local roads. The next project we're working on is the intersection safety screening. And this is what I was talking about earlier, where we identifies the highest collision locations in the district, and then it identifies the highest collision types at those locations. And we try to target and focus our solutions to address the highest collision types that are occurring at the highest collision locations. And I believe that can have a significant impact on the number of collisions that are occurring within the district. The next project we're working on is a traffic signal hardware and software upgrading program. So we've completed an assessment of all the traffic signals in the district and identified where our oldest equipment is and what needs to be upgraded. And then we can start implementing safety improvements such as the leading pedestrian intervals at intersections to, again, help reduce collisions within the district. We also have a rectangular rapid flashing beacon program where we're installing pedestrian crosswalks, flashing beacons that are pedestrian activated to try to alert drivers where pedestrians are crossing the road and increase the likelihood that cars will stop for the pedestrians. We also have a program working on increasing the number of sidewalks and bike lanes in the district. And we've also been working with transit to improve bus stops within the district. So, as I said at the beginning, this is the first report on road safety update. It's hopefully a project or a report that we could prepare and present to the council annually to show how what the collision data in the district shows and how we're working to reduce collisions in the district. So what we'd like our recommendation coming out of the report is that council receive the road safety update and be received for information, and that staff report back to council on road safety and related programming initiatives annually in Q2. Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan, thanks very much. And just before I call on the member of council, Councillor Cassidy, to make a motion, just as a result of that horrible, tragic accident, and I'm not a traffic engineer, but I'm very familiar with the place where that person drove down the wrong way, and I'm wondering if we could put some kind of signage up there. I can understand, particularly right now with what's going on at the overpass by Horseshoe Bay, that people are really confused, and I think some sign that says wrong way or do not enter or something.
We have been in contact with the project manager for the district, with the Ministry of Transportation, highways, and we have been looking at ways to improve the signage, and they are reviewing it and looking at ways to improve the signage as well.
Yeah, they could take forever. I just love us to find a sign and put it out there and go, don't go this way. It just, and the other one, again, it's a provincial highway, and that's the Taylor Way. The crosswalk at Marine Drive on the east side of Taylor Way is just in desperate need of improvement.
Taylor Way and Marine Drive?
Yeah.
East side.
The crosswalk, the painting is just about gone. There's a lot of people using that intersection. And I know we've been asking, but I think we should I feel some days like just going out with a can of paint and doing it myself.
We did raise that with the Ministry of Transportation last year, and they said that they were going to do it this year. And the reason why the lines weren't painted last year was they ran out of time before their contractor couldn't paint anymore for the season.
It really needs to be addressed. I'll ask Councillor Cassidy if she'd be kind enough to make the motion, and then if others wish to speak as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I recommend that the council report titled Road Safety
road safety update dated June the 1st, 2024, from the Senior Manager of Roads and Transportation be received for information, and staff report back to Council on road safety and related programming and initiatives annually in Q2.
Thank you. Councillor Watt?
Before I second that, I just had a question.
Maybe I could just ask for a second.
I'll second that.
And then if you'd like to
Thank
speak
you.
to it, that'd be great.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I want to add, as somebody who lives out in the West, throughout the years I've been there, this isn't the first time somebody's driven the wrong way. I've had somebody come at me. Friend's daughter the other night had somebody come that way. So, and I know that's not our road, but it is, I don't think that accident had anything to do with the, I don't know, I wasn't there, but had anything to do with the construction, but that is a common theme. And I had a question about the diagonal walking at intersections. Do we have any, would there be any case or any intersection to warrant where all 4 lights go red and people can walk in all directions like you see in some cities?
Through the mayor to Councillor Watt, it's generally called a scramble crossing. In the District of West Vancouver, just because of the lower pedestrian volumes that we have, we wouldn't look at a scrambled crosswalk within the district.
I figured that would be the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Well, thank you very much for that report. I have a few points to make. So anybody who has lived or in the vicinity of West Marine Drive on Saturday night, I'm sure heard that car roaring by, because I most definitely did, and heard from a goodly number of people that they did as well. And the fact that we haven't had a significant collision on Marine Drive, I think is nothing short of almost a miracle. Those cars go down that road at excessive speeds. They're very high-end cars, and sooner or later there's going to be a significant accident. And every time yourself comes to speak, I ask about putting in cameras, and I am told it's under provincial jurisdiction. So my question is, has there been any application made either by the police department or ourselves to get those cameras put in?
To Councillor Cassidy through the mayor, we have, the UBCM has put forward an application to have the province increase the number of red light cameras, speed cameras at intersections. And the district have received a letter from the Vancouver Coastal Health supporting red light cameras, photo radar cameras. And so that the next step will be to write to the Solicitor General office and requesting expressing our support for the expansion of the program. When I last talked to the program manager, they were working on a report to go forward to the ministry to look at whether or not the program should be expanded. Unfortunately, when I was talking to her, they were worried about the quality of the data because of what the impact COVID had on the data. So they were delaying until they can get newer data, 2023 data, so that they could try to confirm whether or not the trends they were seeing were COVID related or if they were actual trends. So for us, the next step will be to write to the minister with support from the Vancouver Health authorities, saying that we support expanding the program, and then it'll be up to the minister and the manager of the red light safety camera program as to what happens.
So do you have to wait until the conclusion of the UBCM to write that letter?
No, sorry. The UBCM already submitted requests to the minister. So we're going to be sending our own letter directly to the minister with our support for expanding the program.
All right. And even so, the smiley face, of course, you're well aware of the smiley face, which if you go over 30 miles an hour, you get a frown. And if you don't, you get a smile. And believe it or not, that does work. We've got a lot of very competitive people who live on the North Shore, and they want to beat that smiley face by showing them that I'm deadly serious, that they can do 28 kilometers an hour or whatever. Have we thought along the lines of installing those at various areas, for example, around the school districts?
to Councillor Cassidy through the mayor, yes, we have looked at it, and what we have done recently, we purchased 2 new speed reader boards. I'm not sure if they have the happy face versus smiley face, but the one feature they do have is they're connected to the cloud, so we can download the data whenever we want. And then they're portable, so our intent is to move them about 3-4 times a year to different locations, so that we could spread around the benefit of the speed reader boards. Then if there's, as we have more budget, we could look at purchasing more of the speed reader boards.
Is that the one that you, for example, had out at Cypress Park School? You had it on the road there.
Yeah. That one was our speed trailer, so it's a little bit bigger, a little bit more bulky, but it's very portable, so that's the advantage of it. The new boards we have are similar to the ones on Royal Drive in Horseshoe Bay. They're mounted on a pole. They're about the size of a road sign, and they'll show drivers what speed they're traveling at, and if they're going over. If the posted more than, I think it's 10 kilometers an hour over the posted speed limit, it just flashes saying slow down, is I believe the boards that we bought.
Okay. The problem with so many of these electronic apparatuses is if you do not have the police force in the vicinity to enforce speeding regulations, then they're rather ineffective. So perhaps we need to have a more in-depth conversation with our police department. So my next point is further to what Mayor Sager had to say with that crosswalk, that as you come around from Marine Drive and you're heading up Taylor Way, those people are going at quite a clip. So rather than just ask to have it painted, which of course would be delightful and seemingly easy, most people will recollect that once upon a time, the lanes were changed by an operator who stood on the little island there. You know, the little island, the little, I guess you'll call it an isthmus or whatever it is. And he or she, it was always a man though, changed the signals in accordance with the lanes for coming on to the Lionsgate Bridge. So there must be some electronic capability already in place at that site that we could install one of those flashing signals that are so effective, for example, on 15th.
To Councillor Cassidy through the mayor, it would be like a right turn arrow is what you're thinking?
What I'm meaning is if somebody is wanting to cross at that site to go from the east to the west or vice versa, that there's those flashing stops. Because going through in the dark, and never mind in the daylight, it is, again, another accident waiting to happen. And the electrical system was in place on that little isthmus there at Taylor Way. So I'm wondering if that could be utilized again. And those lights, I recognize that's a provincial highway, but given their track record so far with the Upper Levels Highway, they might be a little more inclined to be accommodative at that site.
And to Councillor Cassidy through the mayor, it's definitely something we can bring up with the ministry. We're hoping to have a meeting with them either later this summer or in the fall to talk about issues that we have with the ministry roads within the district, and that's definitely something we can bring up and discuss with them.
All right. And what are we doing about slowing the traffic down in our business district, the Ambleside and Dunderave business district?
Through Councillor Cassidy through the mayor, in Dunderave specifically, we recently installed some of the white delineators at the crosswalk. And then we're looking at, otherwise we haven't really focused in on the Marine Drive speeds. What we could, as part of the network screening study that's coming up, is something we could look more carefully at.
Mm-hmm. Because I have a note here from the ADBIA that references at 15th and Marine Drive, there's been 111 collisions. At Marine Drive and Park Royal, the north and the south, 100 collisions. At 13th and Keith Road and Marine Drive, 85 collisions. 14th and Marine Drive, 72 collisions. And 16th and Marine Drive, 70 collisions. Now, thankfully, I'm sure there were fender benders but fender benders can lead to significantly more. Again, with the driving capabilities that some people seem to lack these days and the speed factor. So are we working to improve anything in that area?
To Councillor Cassidy through the mayor, this is, I think, a very important study we're working on right now is the network screening study, and that will identify the highest collision locations. And it won't focus on the ICBC claims data. It'll focus on what's called the TRAS, which is the police reported collision data, which is a bit more detailed and much more information. And they'll drill down into finding what's the most common type of collision type that's occurring at the busiest or highest collision locations. And then they're going to recommend to us options to specifically target those types of collisions that are occurring at the busiest intersections. And then from that, we'll be able to develop a capital program that will focus in on addressing the greatest collision problem and at the greatest collision locations. And so that hopefully, once we receive this report, we'll come back to council and we'll have a much more aggressive program, a capital program to address the highest collision locations. And
when do you think that would be, please?
I would guess by the end of the year we should have a report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gambioli.
Yes, thank you. So great report, and I just happy to see it all pulled together in terms of we're broadening the whole sort of area of this sort of safety and transportation issue. So I'm really glad to see that, and it's nice to see it all pulled together. But I do agree that crosswalk at Park Royal is very dangerous. It is basically, the crosswalk doesn't exist anymore. You can't even see that there's a crosswalk. So we're talking about turning north off of Marine Drive when you come from North Vancouver.
Okay.
So up Taylor Way, that little corner. So the Ministry of Transport should now be on notice that we believe it's a very dangerous intersection. We've been saying that for 6 months. They are now under liability if anything happens. They know that we know, so they better get on it. And I think we should deliver that message very soon.
Councillor Cassidy through the mayor, absolutely. I'll reiterate with them this week that we have the concerns about the paint and other issues at the intersection, and definitely when we arrange for a meeting with them, say later this summer, or probably it's going to end up in the fall, we'll bring it up as well at that time.
Yeah, we've been asking for that sidewalk for over a year, actually. So it's crazy. Any further discussion? I'm going to call a question. All in favor? Contrary, carried. Thanks very much, Mr. O'Sullivan.
Thank you.
Item number 4, provincial electric kick scooters. Councillor Watt.
I'd like to recommend that the District of West Vancouver consents to the electric kick scooter, e-scooter pilot project taking place within the district, ending in April of 2028.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Gambioli.
Through the mayor to Councillor Gambioli. There isn't a presentation. The report is sort of standalone, but happy to answer any questions. I guess just briefly, there was a previous pilot in the Motor Vehicle Act that staff had direction to participate in. It was not overly straightforward, and just due to the timing of COVID and some resourcing challenges, that never came to fruition. This new extended pilot, which is in place from 2024 through 2028, has been greatly simplified, and so we're just seeking council direction as to whether to participate. I would note that our neighboring jurisdiction or local governments, being the district and city of North Vancouver, are both participating in the pilot, and so this just is really keeping consistent with those jurisdictions and allows for an alternative transportation mode choice in West Vancouver on roads with posted speed limits of 50 kilometers or less. Now, I know we did receive a letter from a member of the public, I think, just suggesting that this it continues to be the case that we need to focus and put priority on a safe space for those vulnerable road users that aren't in vehicles to travel through expansion of our mobility network.
Thank you. Sorry.
Mayor
Yes,
Shaker, we do
Mr.
have one member of the public that signed up to speak to this item.
Okay, I'll just hear from Councillor Cassidy.
So my concern is with this program is the fact that a lot of individuals choose to ride on the sidewalks with their bicycles, and I'm assuming that we're going to do it with the e-scooters as well. So the question is, are we going to put any signage up on our sidewalks, no bikes, no scooters? And are we going to ensure with our police department that there are boots on the ground that are going to enforce it? Because we do have, well, never mind an elderly population, we have a population, and people seem to completely disregard the fact, if you ask them politely to get off the sidewalk, they just think it's their right because it's definitely a lot safer than the roadway. So we need some semblance of, I think, signage to let them know that that is the ruling, that there's no bikes, scooters, or such the like allowed on the sidewalks.
Through the mayor to Councillor Cassidy, I would agree. I think there might be a tendency. Under the pilot within the Act, they aren't permitted
Yes, I
to
know.
travel on sidewalks. And so I think the first step is whether council endorses participating in the pilot, then we have to apply to the province, and certainly staff will be in discussion with West Van PD and develop a bit of a sort of tracking program and be monitoring, I think, because we can't be everywhere at once, the sort of frequency that what you're describing occurs. And then in response to that, so we can certainly look at mitigative measures, which may include the addition of signage, some sort of proactive communications and educational pieces and that sort of thing. So
Great. Thank you very much.
I do believe that the technology is improving to the point where they can actually be programmed to not work if they try and drive them on a sidewalk.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the sort of like a governing feature, but
Just a GPS tracking device that actually puts a brake on and prevents them from riding where they're not allowed to go. I mean, there is on all of the scooters, there are tracking devices that prevent them from operating outside of a range, and I think they can make it specific enough now that they won't work in some areas.
I think that's quite right for if it's not a personal device.
Right.
So certainly there's that capability in geofencing and that sort of thing. If you're sort of like a Lime program.
Yes.
But just picking up on one thing you said, I think it's quite interesting that the technology of the mobility device has gotten far ahead of the actual policy piece. And so I think participation and learnings coming out of these pilots will be really important in terms of setting a framework around the legislation moving forward.
I have a really simple solution for the people that are using personal ones and they go on a sidewalk and then they're caught by a police officer. They're taken away for a month. They'll learn quickly.
We can impound their scooter. Yeah.
That's it. Councillor Watt.
I'm so excited by this program. I've ridden on e-scooters in a lot of different cities and countries, and I haven't seen people using them on sidewalks. People do tend to, in my experience, abide by the rules. And I also just wanted to emphasize, we've got a lot of e-bikes, and I ride an e-bike, and I feel way safer lower to the ground on an e-scooter. So I do think they're going to provide a really great alternative, mode of transit that might entice people to actually get out of their cars. So I'm thrilled.
Thank you. Councillor Gambioli.
Yeah, my only comment is similar. I'm happy to support this motion, but yeah, my concerns would be the same around the issue of safety for these users, and I'm assuming that the communications we would want to push out are utilizing these on bike routes, for example, as much as possible, that are already a little bit safer than just the main road. I would hate to see a bunch of 16-year-old kids all of a sudden using them, down Marine Drive all the way to Horseshoe Bay kind of thing, instead of taking slightly safer routes. It's a bit of a toss-up. I know that we're trying to promote kids getting to school without being driven by their parents. And I know a lot of the kids in high schools are, not a lot, but some kids are now, these are more affordable than electric bikes. And so some kids are coming by scooter, but some of them don't have a lot of choice. I think of the kids that come up to my daughter's school, they go up 15th, and then they have to deal with all the traffic going in and out of the provincial highway to get up to the school. Otherwise, you go on the sidewalk on the other side of the street. So what do? We put kids in harm's way, or we let them ride on the sidewalk? It's tough. So I guess that's what Mr. Sullivan is going to solve with all of his safety around the schools solutions. But anyway, supportive. Hopefully we can do this in a safe way, and it will be a great success.
Thank you. Councillor Watt.
And is the minimum age 18 or is it 16?
16.
It is 16.
It's 16.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Oh, sorry, there is somebody in the audience. I apologize. Somebody wishes to address council?
Mr. Paul Stott has signed up
Oh,
for this
Mr.
item.
Stott. Thanks for joining us this evening. Our leading community cyclist activist, Mr. Stott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hardly so. But good evening, Mr. Mayor and Councillor. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Paul Stott, as you heard, and I'm a resident of West Vancouver. I've lived here for almost 20 years. During that time, I made my mode shift towards active transportation. I obtained my Compass card, reduced my fleet to one vehicle, and I've been cycling around here for the past 10 years. I now cover more kilometres on 2 wheels than on 4. This is not only reducing my burden on the health services, but I'm benefiting others by reducing pollution and congestion. So I want to help others enjoy those same benefits and returns. And I believed Council shared a similar desire. After all, your website states the District of West Vancouver is committed to expanding, diversifying, and improving active transportation options. This, is one of your strategic goals, as it was of previous councils. Yet so little has been achieved over those years I've been here when compared to our neighbours. So I'm hoping my 3 minutes tonight can help move this mountain. Tonight's agenda, focusing on road safety at problem locations, especially around schools, and the trialling of an additional means of active transport, is certainly encouraging. But modal choice, though, is not a matter of consumer preference. You've got to promote and enable active transportation in order to normalise walking and cycling. And it's about expanding the array of travel choices for any trip. The School Safety Programme and School District 45 Student Bike Education Programme you support are a fundamental step in changing the normative transportation choices of today toward alternatives that can create a more efficient and healthier society. But people using active transport, as we've observed tonight, need a safe place to travel. The district's legacy network of roads and paths does not provide that assurance. No wonder we have the lowest per capita use of active transport in the region. The bike mobility maps presented in Appendix C of the report tonight is a step forward when almost all routes have dangerous 50 km/h speed limits. How those route choices relate to destinations such as schools, shops, civic amenities, or transportation hubs, or to topography even, is not clear. So transforming that network into a safe, convenient network will no doubt require investment. Now, all levels of government have provided substantial resources to help create the necessary networks that are safe, convenient for users to access transit and mode share facilities, as well as our urban amenities. Most, that is, except West Vancouver, which I dare to say has one of the lowest active transport expenditures per capita in the Lower Mainland.
That's time, sir.
All right. May I continue?
I'm sure you won't take long.
Absolutely not. So The recent flat 5-year projection of district transportation budgets promises just more of the same, and that's despite the growth implied by the district's densification plans. The youngsters you hope to attract need transportation options too. So in conclusion, I urge Council to recognise the need for a safe, convenient network of active transportation users and to plan for the upgrading of our roads and streets to a standard that will access the funds available from senior government, and to recognise the socio-economic benefits that a district-wide upgrading programme would generate. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Stott, thanks very much, and thank you for your continuing advocacy on this issue. And there is another speaker. Yes.
I'll be real quick.
Thanks.
Hi, Barbara Shard, West Vancouver. So I assume these are e-scooter program like the Lime bikes, right? Sort of similar thing. So I just kind of noticed that the Lime bikes don't always make it back to their grove, like they're left across the street, or they're supposed to go back to their place. So I'm just kind of wondering, are we going to have the same problem with the e-scooters? They're going to be left all over the place, and does the technology not advanced enough that if they're not back in their little 10 by 10 square, that their grove, that that can be controlled somehow? That's all.
Yes, good question. Thanks very much.
I guess just to address the speaker. So participation in the pilot will allow for personal devices to be used within district roadways, as well as through a sort of rental program such as Lime. Currently, staff don't have any direction to explore or sort of, participate in a sort of a privately operated rental business such as Lime. So I think initially we're just talking about personal devices, but certainly that would be something that we would want to consider should we introduce such a program.
Thanks very much. Is there any further discussion? I call the question. All in favor? Contrary, carried. Thanks so much. Item number 5, proposed consumption of liquor in public places. Councillor Watt.
So I would like to recommend that the proposed consumption of liquor in public places bylaw number 5118, 2021, amendment bylaw number 5341, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Thank you. Councillor Gambioli.
Yeah, so I have a problem with us having this item on the agenda. I would really like to delay this item for at least 2 weeks, because later on in the agenda, we have on the consent agenda a request by our North Shore Medical Health Officer, Dr. Alex Choi, to come and speak on this issue of public consumption of alcohol. And she has a lot of very important things to say about the public health effects of alcohol and it being consumed in public spaces. And this is information we never had before and that I've never seen before. And I think it would be really helpful and important for the public and for the rest of council to hear that information from our professional medical health officer. So I think that since presumably we will agree to invite her to come as a delegation at our next meeting, that we should put this item off until at least after she has made her presentation on this topic.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli. Councillor Cassidy. I think you're next.
Sorry, I had my light left on from before, but I do have something to say. So I'm on the Substance Use Committee, which Dr. Choi is essentially chairing. And so not that I'm going to make my decision one way or another based on what I heard, but essentially there's no such thing as good alcohol. In other words, 1 drink a week, 3 drinks a week, none of it's good. So that essentially is what we are more than likely going to hear. So my perspective on this subject is that we're not a nanny state. If someone chooses to drink, that is their choice. If they choose to drink intelligently, which of course is our hope. But it's essentially to equalize. We can drink in the parks in Ambleside. You can drink in the parks in Vancouver. And so this would be to be able to drink in the park in Horseshoe Bay. It's just called equality. So you can go across the street in Horseshoe Bay and you can have a goodly number of drinks, or one, at Trolls. You can have a dinner and drinks. You can go to the Olive and Anchor and you can have a drink. You can go to the local
Troller pub.
well, forgot that, the pub, yes, and have a drink. So it's not that we are in any way saying that drinking is good. That is a judgment that each individual has to make for themselves. It's merely equalizing that which is allowed elsewhere within the community and that which you can do for an excessive amount of money on the other side of the street. So that's where I stand. We are not a nanny state, I hope. That's where I stand, and so I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Watt.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself. And I did just want to reiterate that we do have parks in the east end of the municipality where alcohol is allowed. And I also want to stress that we have consulted with the Horseshoe Bay Business Association, with our own staff, and to the best of my understanding, our West Van police are also supportive of this, not saying people should go out and drink in the parks, but they don't see an issue in extending the program farther to the west. So I am opposed to deferring this because I can't see anything changing from that decision. And further to that, summer is slipping away. The idea is that people will be able to go out and pick up some takeout, bring a picnic, enjoy time with family or friends in the park. So even deferring it by 2 more weeks, we're almost in August.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you, Mayor Sager. So I'd be curious to know what new information we'd received, because we actually had Ms. Choi come and visit us a year or 2 ago, and we considered allowing alcohol in certain areas of Ambleside. And it was to the point that alcohol consumption is not good. And their concern was really around encouraging alcohol consumption, is the way they viewed allowing drinking in parks. And then more recently, she came to Metro on the committee I sit on there, when Metro was considering allowing drinking in their parks. One of the interesting comments that came up in our Metro discussion was that there's more and more people living in condos where they actually can't gather in an affordable way with their friends and family, and allowing people alcohol consumption. And in fact, in the policy, it's responsible alcohol consumption in the parks was a way for people to get together. And we have heard also concerns from our police department that it makes it a little more challenging for them to manage parks. But again, the word responsible and left to their discretion, they can discern between a nice family having a picnic in the park with their family or a rowdy group of kids that are getting out of control. So I do think this is a great policy and just makes sense to add to our Western activity. And thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Councillor Gambioli.
Well, I'll just add that, well, 2 things. I forgot to say one thing earlier, but deferring by 2 weeks, you know, we haven't had a policy in place for over 100 years. So deferring it for 2 more weeks, I think, as a public policy, is not really significant. But I note that a member of the public wrote to us today, and I'm just reading it now, actually, but back in the day when we approved the Ambleside locations, we had not heard from our medical health officer prior to that decision. She came and spoke to us after that decision. And we also, my recollection is that it was a temporary, to see how it goes, kind of plan for a year. And then we approved it because there hadn't been any issues. But the criteria was park locations that have established gathering and picnic areas, park locations that are in close proximity to public transit and local businesses, and park locations that are in visible and non-remote locations. And that's why we chose the areas that we chose. I would argue that we, in the end, didn't choose Ambleside because it's a regional park and it attracts people from all over the Lower Mainland, not just local residents. So, I would distinguish between Horseshoe Bay Park, which I agree fits these criterias better, and if the businesses are supportive, then I suppose, that's part of the sort of watchful eye. And if it's a temporary, pilot project, I can see that. But White Cliff Park doesn't meet our own criteria, and it will certainly, at the end of the day, whether police and bylaws mind going to White Cliff Park is one thing, because of course they'll do it if we ask them, but in the end, it will cost taxpayers more money, because we will need more people to do that kind of surveying and enforcement, every day of the summer season. So I throw those other points out, because I really just think we should delay this by 2 weeks, and we should have the respect to hear from our own medical health officer, who is the professional among many in this area.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli. We can keep going, or I can call the question. Councillor Watt.
I just wanted to comment about White Cliff Park. So staff have looked at that, and the West Van Police do not have an issue in patrolling that. And people already consume alcohol in those parks. I frequent them. I see it all the time. There hasn't been, certainly in my 18 years out there, I haven't seen any drunken rowdiness. I think really what it's doing is legalizing activity that is always going on. And again, with all due respect to our medical health officer, people are going to drink. They drink at home, they drink in their gardens, bars, restaurants, other parks across the North Shore, including West Vancouver, and I just don't understand why we would defer this by 2 weeks unless there's some overarching policy coming down across the Lower Mainland that intends to limit this or abolish it. And I haven't heard anything to that.
Thank you, Councillor Watt.
Sorry.
Councillor Cassidy?
Well, one of the things about White Cliff Park, other than the fact it's a gorgeous location, it does attract a lot of families coming on picnics, but also it is essentially almost surrounded by residences who I can assume that should there be any rowdy parties, courtesy of alcohol, would be on their telephones to us in virtually a nanosecond. And also, since we have established pay parking in White Cliff Park, then we also have another set of eyes, as the public eyes, and there's the individuals who will be patrolling for the pay parking, who also could be taking upon themselves to report if there's any rowdy issues. Really, again, I'd like to emphasize, we're not a nanny state. Okay, we've legalized marijuana, and now we're basically endeavoring to make things equity between a private space, which such as a restaurant, and a public space. And for many people, they do not have the financial luxury to go into a restaurant these days when a 9-ounce glass of wine can cost you $16. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. I'm going to call a question, and the only comment I would make is that White Cliff Park, as I go out there very frequently, is a spot that people often have some celebrations. I've seen small weddings, I've seen celebrations of life. They always have some toast or something, so I have to agree with Councillor Watt. We're only legalizing what people are actually doing anyway. So I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? Contrary, Councillor Gambioli. The motion is carried. And I'll move on now to item number 6, the rental replacement and tenant assistant policy. And on this, Mr. Hawkins, are you going to give us a presentation? I do want to recognize Councillor Lambert, who has had put a great deal of effort into this policy, will likely make the motion.
Through your worship, yes, I do have a short presentation, but it's council's decision whether they'd like to receive one.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so good evening, Your Worship, and all members of council and members of public behind me. So this item relates to staff proposing an updated rental replacement and tenant assistance policy for council's approval. So this stems from a decision and direction to staff from the May 27th meeting, at which time council received a draft version of this policy, directed staff to consult with the Ambleside Tenants Association on the terms of the policy and to come back within 30 to 60 days with amendments. So that obviously leads us to today's decision, and I can confirm that indeed consultation has taken place with the Ambleside Tenants Association, some of whom I recognise here tonight, and I place on record my thanks. They've been extremely diligent, very generous with their time, and a real pleasure to work with. So I'll just begin by briefly recalling the basic framework, the approach and the objectives. So I think the first point is that this is a rezoning policy and it's a way of being proactive. So we currently do not have such a policy. So it would mean that if it's approved, we have something in place that should a rezoning come forward on a purpose-built rental housing site, then there is policy to guide its consideration. The second point is that we're looking to be balanced. So we're considering tenants, owners and the broader community's housing needs. So for tenants, about providing awareness and security given their housing situation. For owners, so that they start from an informed position in terms of any rezoning project, what it would have to propose, and also particular expectations around its rezoning process. From a community perspective and looking longer term, such a policy would ensure that we maintain rental housing, not only for current tenants, but also the long-term supply through any replacement units. And it's all done so in a way that staff feel we can administer through the site-specific rezoning process. And then above all, it's a rezoning policy, but it's a council policy. So I've characterised this previously as an additional tool that council could use or would use if adopted, if it's faced with rezoning applications. And we think the most judicious way to do that is in a very structured way, where a report would come to council at both the preliminary application and the formal application stage. So the pre-app stage, council will understand what tenant supports are being proposed, what new housing accompanies them, and how do those things relate alongside an initial development scheme, so things like form, massing, context and fit. Council could then direct any changes it saw fit, provide any directions, guidance to the applicant. Should an application then proceed to the formal stage, council would have something to refer back to. Has the applicant responded to that previous direction, and ultimately is council satisfied with a detailed rezoning proposal and what it does for tenants and the housing supply? Moving into some of the more detailed requirements. So this would mean that at both the pre-app and the formal app stage, council will have a very good understanding of the tenancy agreements in place, so the eligibility of the policy, find out more about the household information of any given building that submitted for a rezoning. The tenants would have that communication from a very early stage, written notification, information meetings, and so on. And then also the assurance of, at a minimum, various forms of support. So the replacement of rental units or floor area, 3 credible, reasonable options for alternative rental housing, minimum of 4 months financial assistance, compensation to move out and then move back into a replacement unit with the right of first refusal at equivalent or comparable rates. And from the administrative perspective, having looked at the available legal tools, the most secure way to do this is to actually require statutory declarations in 2 phases. So prior to a building permit being issued, the applicant would have to statutorily declare that they had indeed provided the financial compensation, the pieces up front, and then on completion of the building, but prior to occupancy permit being issued, again, declare that they had indeed offered right of first refusal and move back compensation for moving fees. So as the nature of this item is, it's coming back after consultation. So as I said, I've confirmed that their staff have indeed engaged with the tenant association, who themselves have done a great job of reaching out to the wider tenant community. So that the policy in front of council is an improved version. It includes a better understanding of how to tailor assistance for tenants based on their unique households' characteristics. So they assistance would have to consider things like the size of the unit, the length of the tenancy in place. So, there is a difference between a tenant that's been renting for, say, 2 months versus 2 years or perhaps 2 decades in terms of the kinds of assistance they might require. It acknowledges there could be flexibility in terms of alternative approaches to that assistance. So council could direct, tenants could request, a landlord may actually prefer to provide a top-up mechanism to distribute the costs across the construction period as opposed to a upfront lump sum payment. I've come out of this with a broader understanding of what a household means. In terms of statistics, we understand that there's a lot of single-person renter households, but what that doesn't capture is that to a lot of these renters, their household really includes a companion pet, so the policy is set up in a way that existing pets could be grandfathered back into a replacement unit. The policy has greater clarity for tenants and applicants that all of the provisions must be addressed, and it would really be up to council only if council directs otherwise for alternative forms of assistance, then the policy would be the expectation. And there's also a greater awareness around that. This really needs to, for this to work for tenants, it also needs to work for owners. So the costs of rental replacement, the cost of tenant assistance can only be offset with additional housing. So realistically, rental replacement and tenant assistance would be accompanied by new strata development on those sites. So in conclusion, and further to Council's direction in May, staff are recommending modification to the previous draft policy and the approval of the updated policy. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Hawkins. Councillor Lambert.
Yes.
We unmute Councillor Lambert?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. And just to sort of reiterate, this has really been a remarkable process. It's been very thoughtful, focused, and efficient on the part of both staff and the stakeholders. So, and I'm very happy to have been part of it together with Councillor Thompson and Councillor Watt, who formed part of an unofficial council committee working with the Ambleside Tenants Association to help craft this policy under the hand of David Hawkins. So it was just a great effort, a model for others to come. So on that, I would like to recommend that the proposed rental replacement and tenant assistance policy 0164 be modified as described in Appendix A of the June 28, 2024 report from the Senior Manager of Community Planning and Sustainability, and that the proposed rental replacement and tenant assistance policy 0164 attached as Appendix B to the June 28, 2024 report from the Senior Manager of Community Planning and Sustainability be approved.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Snyder.
Yeah, I'd like to second that, and also I just want to expand just a little bit on Councillor Lambert's comments, which I fully agree with and support. One of the things that I do want to do is apologize to all of the tenants that over the last, I believe it goes back to probably September or October, because originally this was baked into the LAP amendment bylaw, or the bylaws, our zoning bylaws. And those were defeated back last year. And I know there was a great deal of concern amongst many of our renters, including many of our senior renters who went through quite a bit of anxiety and stress over, whether or not this meant that they were going to be evicted and their buildings were going to come down. And I know it caused a great deal of stress. And I just want to, reassure those people that, that was never, ever the intent. When those policies were defeated, it was to try and make sure that we came back and addressed this appropriately and responsibly, and I think that's exactly what this does. So I too want to thank Mr. Hawkins and all the Tenancy Association and those councillors involved in putting this forward. So I just want to, hopefully this will ease the minds of those that have felt such a great deal of stress over the last 8 to 9 months with the unknown over their shoulders. So
thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I can certainly appreciate my colleagues' comments and reiterate them. And I'd also like to say, just truly appreciated the Tenants Association stepping up. Currently, I'm not in the rental market, but the stories we hear, not only about the vulnerability of losing your place, but the impossibility of finding a good replacement. And it just seems like an impossible situation altogether. And while I think these are as good as we can do, honestly, where I think we're falling short here is appealing again to the feds and the province. Because I think if we could find a way to get them they want affordability as much as we do. And I know we're not a community by ourselves where our older rental stock is truly our affordability. And rather than always, promoting redevelopment, if we could somehow get the senior governments to find funding to improve these buildings so people can actually just stay in them. The stories around people not being able to install heat pumps for the simplicity of comfort of living in a home, and a variety of other things they can do to create another 10, 20 years or more in a building life. So I do hope, as we go home and go on and speak with the province and staff continue to work with them, that we can look for these sort of solutions to really set your mind at ease and keep you in your homes.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli.
Yeah, and on that segue, I'll just add that it's I guess the silver lining for me is that the Tenants Association has been created as a result of this issue. And I'm hoping that, there hasn't been a Tenants Association before. And it's really about time. And I'm looking forward to seeing them be part of some of the solutions and advocacy for renters, tenants in the future. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli. Councillor Watt.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins, for putting this together and the ATA. And I just wanted to add, I truly appreciate the Tenants Association understanding where certain asks that came forward we didn't feel could be managed within the context of this document, and you were incredibly graceful, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone involved in this process. I'm going to call the question.
I apologize, Mayor Sigurd.
Sorry.
Just before you call the question,
Yes.
There are two members of the public that signed up to speak to this item.
Sorry. Of course.
Okay. Thank you. The first name is Jacob Isaac, followed by John Miller.
Thank you. Mr. Isaac?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and all of Council for having me. My name is Jacob Isaac, and you are probably more familiar with seeing my predecessor, Don Peters, speak to this, but I'm very happy tonight to be speaking as the chair of the North Shore Community Housing Action Committee. First off, we would like to commend the policy and everyone who's worked on it, including the Tenants Association and Mr. Hawkins. As a committee, we recognize that affordable housing is not realized through the development of physical infrastructure alone. That's to say that affordable housing is as much a psychological ideal as it is an architectural one. And this is why we feel it's important to place emphasis on the intangible aspects of affordable housing. This is why the creation of a comprehensive and accessible tenant assistance policy is an indispensable feature of affordable housing in the District of West Vancouver. We specifically commend the policy for including the option for displaced tenants to access the services of a tenant's relocation coordinator. Forced relocation can be a very daunting and confusing time for many tenants, and TRCs provide invaluable support for tenants as they move through this process. TRCs have been shown to be one of the most effective support systems for tenants who have been forcibly relocated, and we're very excited to see that, and we urge Council to ensure that this resource is available to all tenants who need it. However, we do believe that point 4.7, which addresses the provision of tenant relocation coordinators, could benefit from the use of stronger language. Specifically, it states that tenants are able to identify at least 3 options for rental accommodations based on factors such as geography, bedroom count, household compositions, and monthly rate. We strongly encourage the Council to amend the policy to explicitly include accommodations for tenant-specific physical accessibility needs. Well, we assume that this is Council's intentions, as it would be the development applicants. Recent issues with TAPs on the Vancouver Broadway plan have shown that unless this is specifically written down, there may be issues that will emerge with this. So we encourage the policy to be expanded to include physical accessibility needs. We are also very pleased to see that the financial compensation options are not limited to one-time payments. While a lump sum payment may be desirable for some, alternative compensation schemes such as rent top-ups may be more desirable. However, on this point, we do have some concerns about the discretion given to development applicants in choosing between providing 4 months rent at the existing rental rate or at the CMHC West Vancouver's rental market survey median rent. For tenants who have lived in their unit for an extended period of time, their rents will be far lower than the median rate today, which means that 4 months of compensation will go not very far in the current market, which is the intended purpose of that 4 months compensation. So we encourage the policy to be amended to allow development applicants to pay at existing rental rates only if they exceed the current CMHC median rates. Nevertheless, whether these recommendations are adopted today or in the future, we would like to commend everyone who's worked on this. This is a big step forward for tenants in West Vancouver. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Isaac.
The next speaker is John Miller.
Mr. Miller, Dr. Miller, how are you this evening?
I'm getting there.
You're getting there.
Yeah.
You're doing good.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm John Miller, a 20-odd-year resident of West Vancouver. And I just want to add my voice to the support that I've heard for this initiative tonight. It's a great relief to me to see this going forward. I was extremely disappointed when the previous zoning initiative was turned down, but this now corrects that, and these tenants will be protected. And we've all got the benefit of the Tenants Association being formed, and that's a great bonus for the community. I'll just make the point, though, that our problems haven't been solved. We still don't have enough affordable housing. And as you know, Mr. Mayor, we still have a homeless problem, and you'd be disappointed if I didn't mention that. So we have to keep thinking about this and come back to it and find more innovative ways to solve our affordable housing problem. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Miller, and thank you, Dr. Miller. I have been meeting fairly regularly to start thinking about how we do address these issues. Councillor Gambioli.
So those were two quite specific suggestions for amendments to this policy. Could we hear from staff about their thoughts on the physical accessibility needs issue and the CMHC median rates?
Thank you. Mr. Hawkins.
Through your worship, Councillor Gambioli. I think the overarching point is that it's a policy and that it's a council policy and that its use will always be site-specific. So at the preliminary application stage and then at the formal application stage, you would see a proposed preliminary tenant support plan and a proposed finalised one, and you would essentially consider that as part of your consideration of an application. So as written, I'm fairly comfortable that we can have confidence in any future council making those decisions, understanding the broad range of household needs, which could indeed include accessibility. I concur with that, and directing those kinds of things through an individual site rezoning. Similarly, in terms of the financial compensation, I do think we need to be flexible and realistic in that there are a range of existing sites. There are a range of existing tenancy agreements. These will also change over time, and that the policy is set up so that council can understand what is feasible, make adjustments on a site-specific basis, knowing that there is a minimum. Council could direct more, an applicant could propose more, but that these things will vary over time. So I think the policy allows you to push for those things as sites come forward. It is also a council policy, so if approved tonight, it could be amended at any time in the future. It would simply require an open decision at an open meeting. So it's entirely council's pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. I do have some sympathy with the suggestion that accessibility should be included as a criteria. I don't see a downside to that. I think it's something we would expect. Councillor Gambioli, you still have your mic on. Do you have further thoughts?
Well, I'm just thinking about what you're saying. Yeah, so Mr. Hawkins, I mean, our future councils and staff, if we're not all here, going to remember these important points, or are we going to count on the CHAC staff to come back and remind us each time there's an application?
Pardon me, through your worship, to Councillor Gambioli. If it provides council greater comfort in considering approval of the policy tonight, I would very much characterise that as a friendly amendment, so any councillor could move that for section 4.7 of the proposed policy to insert and physical accessibility needs after including pets in that paragraph.
Councillor Gambioli, I'd suggest a friendly amendment.
Okay, I'll make that friendly amendment. Suggest that friendly amendment.
Is there a seconder to that? Sorry, Councillor Lambert.
Yeah, I'll accept that friendly amendment. That's fine.
Thank you. And so the motion then is amended with that provision. Is there any further discussion? Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Contrary, that motion is carried. And now back, Councillor Lambert, back to you again on your councillor's motion for short-term rental accommodation.
Okay, well, thank you, Mayor Sager. And I'm very pleased to bring forward this recommendation regarding short-term rental accommodations. And this is really a response that's been crafted by staff to the provincial Bill 35 to bring us in line with that provincial legislation. So I won't belabor that and just move the resolution that staff prepare amendments to zoning bylaw number 4662/2010, business license bylaw number 4455/2005, bylaw notice enforcement bylaw 4368/2004, and fees and charges bylaw number 5251/2023, and any other bylaws as required to 1, enable short-term rental accommodation in all housing types, but on sites where secondary suites are permitted, limited to one of the host's principal residence or basement suite, secondary suite, or coach house, detached secondary suite. 2, increase the fines for unpermitted short-term rental accommodations to $500. And 3, regulate the operation of any short-term rental businesses through the business license bylaw, and that staff report back on any potential staffing implications as a result of regulating short-term rental accommodation. And I'd like to add to this, I mean, the intent of this, I think, is pretty solid. There's behind this is the effort to protect sort of long-term rental accommodation, and at the same time balance that with the need for short-term rental accommodation, which exists already in the District of West Vancouver, even though it is technically illegal. So this harmonizes our municipal policies with the provincial policies and provides protection for long-term rentals and still some room for short-term rentals in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'd like to second that and certainly support Councillor Lambert's words. You know, in a community that doesn't offer any visitor space to stay, hotels and motels at the moment, I know it can be controversial, this short-term rental program, but I believe these give us some constructs to be able to manage it better. And I'm pleased to be able to provide that in our community.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Watt.
Yeah, so, sorry, I stepped out for a moment. Is $500 the maximum fine we can impose, or could that number be higher?
Okay. Mr. Bailey, do you know an answer to that question?
Through the mayor, I believe that it could be higher, but I think council is attempting to, provide a significant deterrent while not maximizing the total amount.
But if it was higher, it'd be a greater deterrent.
Again, council, I believe that the amount that council can increase it to is higher. I think it's up to Sorry, Mr. Billing, 500 is the maximum under this, but it can go through an MTI process, which then takes it to a higher level, which I think is up to 1,000, Scott? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd certainly like to see that in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
This is something that I struggle with. I live in the Ambleside Dundrave area where the lot sizes are not particularly large, so we live very close to each other, not quite cheek to jowl, but pretty close. And I do recognize that these short-term rentals are currently taking place and that neighbors turn a blind eye or deaf ear or such the like. But should we, in essence, endorse what is occurring, then it may well increase the numbers. And if you're paying a decent amount of money for your house and the privilege of living there, there's certain things that you want, which is peace and quiet. So individuals going back and forth, whether it's for 3 months or such the like, may not be what you're wanting next door to you. And I do know there's short-term rentals, people renting their places for 2 and 3 nights and such the like. But I don't think I'm going to be endorsing it for that reason. I think what we're really just doing is adding another layer of bureaucracy, potentially another staff member to enforce this. But also, seriously, $500 is a slap on the wrist. Even $1,000 is a slap on the wrist. So I will not be endorsing it because I do believe that sort of the integrity of one's peace and quiet in their neighborhood should be of paramount importance. And again, I do know what's going on, but I'm not going to endorse it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Watt.
Yeah, so I'm very comfortable with this because it does eliminate homes where the owner is not present. So, and also the owners of an Airbnb also have the ability to eject a guest who is not abiding by the rules. So I think most of us wouldn't really want guests on our property who are partying loudly or anything like that. And with respects to some people's concerns that I've heard aired, that this potentially takes away long-term rental. I think a lot of the people that do Airbnbs don't have an interest in having that. And some people, it allows people the opportunity to help offset costs in their home and to block out time so they may have visiting family or a nanny or whatever. So I think it gives a lot of flexibility while also ensuring peace and quiet in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. Councillor Gambioli.
We've had some residents request a form of this that we said we were looking into. In other words, our staff were looking into this. So where is the staff report? Where is the evidence of the work that our staff have been doing on this? Because I have some of the same concerns.
Well, this is a council brought on motion and
I know, so I'm just wondering why this is preempting the work that staff were already going to be doing, and why we are not sort of looking at a bit more of a comprehensive policy or bylaw.
Well, through the mayor again, this is a council-initiated notice of motion, and staff will follow the direction.
Well, I guess my question then is, where are staff at with answering this question that has been put to us for 6 or 8 months now by residents who want to do some of these sorts of things? Are staff working on this, and if so, where are we at?
Sorry, which question, Councillor Gambioli? What's the question?
The question of short-term rentals. And are we aligning with the province? Are we doing our own thing? Are we overriding our own bylaw? Why is this,
Sure.
What's going on? What are staff doing?
Sure, so I'll respond, I guess, at a high level. And I think the response is that, the province and through the Short-Term Rental Accommodation Act, that limits short-term rental to the host principal resident plus one accessory suite or coach house, right? municipalities are allowed to be more stringent, and in the situation that council is, if you do approve this bylaw, you would be more stringent than the purpose of the Short-Term Rental Accommodation Act, because you would only be restricting it to one unit. So as Councillor Lambert mentioned, I think the intent of council in the notice of motion is to seek that balance, to still provide for a stable rental housing stock, while providing for short-term rental accommodation in West Vancouver. I don't have any data as to the efficacy of what that does to housing affordability or to short-term rentals in our community, but that's the intent of the motion, and that's how it relates to the provincial regulations.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Not really. I think Mr. Bailey actually answered it, and I believe Councillor Lambert prefaced this, that just basically brings us into line with the provincial guidelines, and I'm presuming they've done the work behind the data that shows this type of policy could be effective.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion is carried. Sorry, Councillor Gambioli, I'm not sure if your hand was in favor or opposed.
No, it was contrary because I still don't have any answers. So.
Thank you.
Mayor
okay.
Sager, just to confirm, Councillor Cassidy and Gambioli were in opposition.
Sorry, I missed Councillor. Yeah. 2 opposed. Thanks very much. Item number 8, proposed zoning bylaw. This is the work on our local area plan. We'll start with the zoning bylaw, and this is just the bylaw that moves all of our buildings from 1.75 to 2. This part of this motion will cure the problem that people have had with balcony enclosures and those kinds of things. Councillor Gambioli.
I will make the recommendation for this tiny incremental motion to move us slightly forward, which is to recommend that the proposed zoning bylaw number 4662 2010 amendment bylaw number 5338 2024 be adopted.
Thank you. Councillor Snyder. Second. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary, the motion is carried. Now the work on the official community plan. Councillor Gambioli.
Right. Well, I will recommend that the proposed official community plan bylaw number 4985 2018 amendment bylaw number 5291 2024 be read a third time.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Snyder.
So maybe I could just ask Ms. Dallas if I would like to represent, or if I would like to propose an amendment. Can I do so at this time now? Or would you need a seconder before an amendment be proposed?
It depends on whether it's going to amend Councillor Gambioli's motion. Is that what I understand?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. That now would be the time.
Okay. Then I would like to make I guess it doesn't have to be friendly or what have you, but
well, let's try it as a friendly amendment.
Okay. As a friendly amendment, I will recommend that the proposed official community plan bylaw number 4985 2018 amendment bylaw number 5291 2024 be modified at Schedule A as follows. Policy BFB 4.4.1C from 21.33 to 27.43 meters, that's 6 to 8 stories, to 18.29 meters, which would be 5 stories, and policy BF 4.4.5A from 21.33 to 45.72 meters, which is 6 to 14 stories, be changed to 2133-33.53 meters, which would be 6 to 8 stories, and policy BFB 4.4.5B from 21.33 to 45.72 meters, which is 16 to 14 stories, down to 21.33, which is 6 stories.
Thank you. Councillor Gambioli, would you accept those as a friendly amendment?
And I would be happy to sort of quickly just sort of, I guess we can do that for discussion. I can be more specific in which areas. I'm assuming that a lot of people are not going to have any idea what I'm talking about with all of those numbers, so I would be happy to sort of address some of the areas that are being addressed.
Thank you. Well, this these list of proposed amendments are in an attempt to find a compromise to move this long-awaited local area plan forward. And I would be happy to outline what they are.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I think the purpose is that, we heard a lot of opinions and a lot of voices up to the public hearing, including the public hearing, that addressed many concerns with what was being proposed. And I know that not every and all of those concerns are addressed in these amendments, but I think what the point is that, we've heard a lot of the opposition and are trying to address some of the concerns moving forward. Now, again, it's not going to answer every single one of the concerns that was raised, but I think it's just important that, the community understands that, we did hear a lot of the comments and feedback, and it's an attempt to try and compromise somewhat and an effort to keep the Ambleside local area plan moving forward, as opposed to taking another step backwards and revisiting this entire thing all over again.
Thank you. Councillor Gambioli, your thoughts?
So just a couple points. Just a point of technical clarification. A friendly amendment, my understanding is it's friendly if it doesn't really affect the substance of the motion substantially. It's not subjective up to me to decide if I decide it's friendly or not friendly, is it? I mean, this is a very substantive change to the, plan. So,
Through the mayor to Councillor Gambioli, it depends if it is voted on and passes. The friendly amendment needs to be moved and seconded and voted on, and then it can either proceed to be voted on the main motion or not.
but if it's a friendly amendment, isn't that up to me if I accept it as a friendly
Correct.
amendment, as opposed to
You can
just
accept
an
it as a-
amendment?
Correct.
You can accept it as a friendly amendment.
I can
Or
accept
not,
it.
and it could proceed to a vote.
I see, okay, so, right. Let's just clarify what we're talking about without all of the policy numbers. We're talking about reducing the number of floors on the block of 1800 Marine Drive from 6 to 8 stories to 5 stories. We're talking about reducing the number of stories on the 1300 block Dutchess and Clyde from 6 to 14 stories to 6 to 10 stories. And we're talking about the Hollyburn Corner number of stories, the corner, effectively, not really the corner, but anyway, nearby 22nd and Marine, which we're calling the Hollyburn Corner, from 6 to 14 stories to 6 stories. So we are driving all of these heights down.
Correct.
Now, what I recall from what I heard, contrary to what Mr. Snyder said he heard, is I heard 29 people speak in favor of the official community plan as it was written, and I heard 4 people speak against various parts of it. So that was on the night of the public hearing, so I don't know. There was obviously more correspondence than that. There was obviously public consultation that was done for many months beforehand, but I didn't really hear that much around those 3 sites specifically. In fact, I heard people, especially on the 1300 blocks of Dutchess and Clyde, who specifically spoke to keep the increase and make it keep the number of stories to 6 to 14 and make it as much as possible so they could, in the future, rebuild and enable themselves to, pay for the reconstruction. So I'd like to hear from staff. I don't really feel comfortable with this last-minute amendment. I would like the public to know that I saw these amendments for the first time 20 minutes before this meeting started. So, I really would have liked to have seen these suggestions. They're very detailed. They've been thought out for obviously a long time. But I would really like in the future, for very important votes like this, to have everyone on this council at least having the same information.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli. Councillor Snyder.
Yeah, I just wanted to further comment that there was a lot of correspondence that was received before the public hearing as well that addressed this, including certain organizations, including ADRA in particular, who, I don't know, I certainly spoke with. I know several others on council spoke with them, and they were representing a very large part of the population, and they were speaking on that organization's behalf, and they were very clear on many of the concerns and issues they had. Now, I appreciate that these changes don't address all of those concerns or completely address the concerns to their complete satisfaction, but I think, again, it's an opportunity to try and reach a bit of a compromise and keep things moving in a forward direction as opposed to revisiting this again and taking a step backwards again for another 3 to 4 months before anything could be further advanced, I would assume.
Thank you. And just so everyone is aware, I drafted these proposed amendments and circulated them this afternoon at 1 o'clock, just because I sense that this issue may have a problem passing today. And I, like Councillor Snyder, would rather see the local area plan proceed rather than be defeated and sent back for minor amendments.
I'd still like to hear from staff, in general, about the official community plan, how this relates to, the numbers that we were talking about, et cetera, your feedback.
Through the mayor to Councillor Gambioli, I'd like to be rather cautious because the public hearing is closed, and so I'm hesitant
really
to provide any
appropriate.
additional information. I think what we're seeing here is we've advised council that in the past, and so I'm not providing new information here, that if you are changing use, density, or tenure, then you're back to a first reading and another public hearing. But on items like height, where the motion is attempting to make a compromise, that those are things that can be considered and can be amended properly. So overall, again, this is an appropriate thing for council to consider and debate at this stage of the bylaw reading.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I actually applaud the attempt to make these amendments. And, I'd like to point out they're pretty straightforward, and also the process is not out of place either. Quite often, especially last term, friendly amendments were made on the fly within a debate. And so the fact that these were actually emailed to all of us around 1 o'clock, I think is fair. Also, they're very straightforward. You're simply lowering the height restrictions. Nothing else changes. And that's part of the concern I have, is that you still keep the same FAR. So you're just going from tall, skinny buildings to more bulky, shorter buildings. But I don't see any problem with this coming forward as it has. I actually applaud it because I think staff and council and even our public really would like to see this move forward. And the question will be, are these enough to keep it moving forward?
Councillor Cassidy.
So, well, one could say, does one believe in compromise? I suppose in life one should be prepared to compromise. But this is a major move we're making with this local area plan, and I think I would rather get it right rather than, if we have to go back to square one, I hate to tell you, I'd rather go back to square one and get it right. Because one of the things I heard when I was campaigning for this position and earlier from those residents who happened to come across me at 16th and Marine, one of the things they most definitively said to me is, we do not want to see height on our Marine Drive corridor. We don't want it. And you just need to go to see the Kiwanis building at 22nd, right beside Pauline Johnson School, to see what 6 stories looks like. The only reason the westerly looks as good as it does is it's being camouflaged by those streets. And if you now listen to anyone who's involved in the development community, they're not talking about towers anymore. They're talking about ground level living. The opportunity for young families to come in and have a backyard and a front yard. They're talking those 4plexes and those 6plexes. They're not talking towers anymore. So I am not going to be approving this friendly amendment. I appreciate the fact that it's an effort to move matters forward, but when I get something at the latter part of the afternoon to say yay or nay to, I don't think so. And this is the Marine Drive corridor, and I'm 6 infill I don't necessarily have a problem with, but if you talk to people who run the Pink Palace, you're not going to get anything at 6 stories because it's not financially in their best interest to build a rental building at that site for them at 6 stories. So I really think we have to be realistic, and if we do go back to square one, so be it. We're putting a template in place for all successive councils to follow. This is not a wing and a prayer situation. And, you know, I am deeply attached to this community, and I want to know that as we go forward, it stays the delightful place that we all love to call home, and not some place that a council of the day thought, well, let's do a compromise at the last minute to move it forward. So that's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watt.
Yeah, so I commend Mayor Sager for putting these proposed changes forward. For me, the heights are still too high, and the density along Marine Drive in particular is still too high. And I also think that we have to look at and consider and respect the opinions of the organizations like ADRA that represent a lot of citizens within that community. They may not have all come out here to speak, but they did feel they were represented. And as Councillor Snyder said, many of us had dialogue with them, and I spent several hours and several days back and forth with that executive. And unfortunately, even these friendly amendments don't meet what the community wants, and I don't believe what the greater community in West Vancouver wants either. So I can't support it. And further to that, I look at areas like the 2200 block, and I don't feel it should be in there at all. We're looking at townhomes made of brick that still have many years ahead, decades left in them. So I don't know why those would be in this document at this point in time. It's too far into the future to envision what this community is going to look like, or to try to entice developers to come forward with a development on sites where perfectly good buildings exist.
Thank you, Councillor Gambioli.
So thanks for the feedback and discussion, everybody. So I will accept those 3 amendments as friendly amendments.
Thank you, Councillor
And
Gambioli.
I will say that my feelings are that, number one, staff have been very, 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 very patient and professional over the past year on part 1 of the 3 parts of this project, so I would like to thank them. The feedback overall, which was conducted, most of it more than a year ago, was overall very positive. And the community encouraged us to move forward with greater diversity in housing and greater forms of housing in Ambleside and Dunderave. And so did the people who came to speak at the public hearing. And I think that Ambleside will still be a unique village. We will just have a few more happy people and hopefully local workforce in it. The plans are very well thought out. I sympathize greatly with St. Stephen's Church, who have been waiting years for this decision. And I note that a few, which was rare, a few of the people who came to speak at the public hearing were young people. and when I say young people, I mean, under 50, who are urging us to create this kind of housing. And so our duty as councillors in this position is to the district of West Vancouver. I'm afraid it's not to individual homeowners or even individual renters. It is to the district, the benefit of the future of the entire district. So this OCP amendment addresses the needs of the district, the entire district, and it addresses the needs of our businesses and our schools and our workforce and our families, and they need diverse forms of housing. It also addresses the needs of the planet. Density will help traffic issues and will help greenhouse gas emissions and will help the sustainability of our district, which is part of our strategic plan. So I support this, and this is the biggest decision in Ambleside and Dunderave since 1959 when they created the apartment area, in my opinion. So it's very important, and I want us to move forward.
Sorry, Councillor Lambert is still with us. There he is. Good. We lost him for a moment. Thank you, Councillor Cassidy.
So I don't know what form of diversity in housing that Councillor Gambioli is referring to, because when you're putting height, that's called an apartment building. So this is not diverse housing. This is apartment building, apartment building, apartment building. There's no diversity. And when you talk about saving the planet Earth, you're going to be taking buildings down to put buildings up. Okay, so that's where I stand in that. And as far as St. Stephen's Church is concerned, in all those churches, we have received correspondence from members of the public who actually take great exception to the fact that these sites would even be considered for rezoning, because thus far they have received preferential tax treatment, and now they want a zoning which will increase their property value. So they feel they're taking with the left and taking with the right. So just to let you know, I'd rather get this plan right than play tic-tac-toe down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Thompson.
Well, thank you. It is exasperating getting to this point and pausing, but it makes me reflect on our rental protection policy too, where it has all good intentions. But, last time we discussed this 2 weeks ago, I actually called for the vote. And recently to that, a few suggestions rather late in the game came forward of amendments we could make that gave me more comfort, and I believe gave the community more comfort. And as our process goes, they're not things that we could consider. So my feeling was it would have failed, and then we could get started on having discussions and making those amendments that make us all feel a little better about moving forward. This is the biggest decision since 1959, and we have to get it right. We're not always going to be here. We've got to make sure that future councils don't interpret what we set in place differently than we do, and I've seen this all the time. Every time you read a report, the first thing that comes up is the reference to we're following what the OCP recommends, what the LAP recommends, and the inclination is to reach those targets. So I feel, as sad as it is to step back, it will be a good step back to then step forward with a lot more comfort. And it's interesting. The one philosophy around all this, stalling this desire for density, I don't really look at it that way. We're talking about less height on Marine Drive. Personally, if it's the right build, it's the right project, whether it's a hotel or a really great housing project, I believe this council will consider some extraordinary height. I don't have any problems with St. Stephen's coming forward. And the thing we're debating is increasing an FAR to 0.3 or 3.0, excuse me, 2.75.
2.75.
And, regardless of what happens what we set into the OCP, these projects have to go for rezoning. And what I'm feeling is that if it is a good project, we'll go through the rezoning project, maybe we'll approve 4, don't hold me to that. But we are open to development, we are open to inspired ideas. So I'm not going to support these friendly amendments, or unfortunately, and I'm sorry staff, I'm sorry rest of council, I'd like to pause this, step back, and review some other amendments that possibly could make this a much better result.
Thank you, Councillor Watt.
That was really well put, Councillor Thompson. And, you know, I just want to emphasize that this council has not been anti-density. A week ago, one short week ago, we approved Cypress Village. And, you know, at the time that a lot of the engagement we had going on Ambleside was happening, that was not being considered. At that time, I don't think the public were also considering, and we're going to be adding 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 people up the hill in that time. And that's not to say that they won't come, but I agree with Councillor Thompson that there isn't a one-size-fits-all. Some projects will come forward and they will fit the criteria. And the other thing I wanted to add is the most affordable stock is the existing stock. So while we look at trying to create more affordable housing, by the time you add in all of the new policies, right down to building to certain regulations that are being imposed upon us, a new build is infinitely more expensive than anything that exists right now, and newer builds tend to be smaller when it comes to a condo or a townhome. So when it comes to families in affordable housing, a lot of the stock that we already have is going to be far more suitable.
Councillor Lambert, would you like to add any comments? Otherwise, I'm going to call the question.
No, you can go ahead and call the question. I think many of the issues that I would have raised have been raised by others, so that's fine. Thanks.
Thank you. We have a motion before us. All those in favor? Contrary? The motion is defeated. Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda items. Councillor Snyder.
Yes, I would like to recommend that the consent agenda items as written be approved with the removal of, did you remove 10.2?
I didn't do anything yet.
Oh, okay. I would like to...
Okay, let's just move the consent agenda items.
Consent agenda items as written.
I'll ask Councillor Thompson to second it, and then...
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary, carried. We'll move now to a motion to appoint. We've now set up our planning committee. Oh, no, but you said you didn't.
No, I said we're going to pass this up. Sorry.
Oh, we know we asked. Would you like to pull 10.2?
I would have liked to pull 10.2, yes.
Discuss it, right?
Sorry, that is not the question I heard. Sorry, perhaps my ears are still...
Yes, I can appreciate that. We can, because you did indicate to me earlier you wanted 10.2 pulled.
Yes, I do.
So,
Mayor Sager?
Mayor Sager, if Councillor Gambioli simply wants to comment on the item, that wouldn't affect the proceedings. If you wanted to change the resolution, that might be a bit trickier.
No, I
But
just have some questions that staff have kindly already prepared answers for, but I think they're interesting, perhaps informative.
if you would like to ask questions for the public benefit, then please do. And I see our wonderful Director of Finance is coming up, so I think she's anticipating this. Ms. Gordon, thanks for joining us tonight. Gosh, I hope we didn't keep you here all this evening for this.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
So this is for the benefit of the public. This is the report on the proposed fees and charges bylaw, which is a nice long document with lots of detail. but I pulled out a couple of questions. First of all, what is a hot work permit? That's one that stumped me.
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Gambioli, hot work is work involving basically heat and flames, like torching a roof or welding, or I think there's a couple of other examples, sorry, they escape me. But there is extra precautions that have to be taken with work like this, and there are extra risks, particularly which the fire department has made us aware of. So that is the reason for the additional fee, so that the people undertaking this work can understand that this is, they need to be especially careful.
Got it. Okay, that's news to me. Okay, great, thank you. And the other two questions I have are, so in the report, it says, this is related to the pay parking in our 3 parks that we currently have underway. So the staff have projected net revenues this year of $500,000 to be collected and put into a reserve fund to be allocated to future capital projects and operating expenditures in these 3 parks. So I got to thinking that we have about 20,000 households, give or take, and if that money is going to be put into parks maintenance and capital projects for the future, then that actually must relate to people's property taxes coming down a bit. So I just wondered if staff could confirm if I'm on the right track at all.
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Gambioli, that's a very difficult question to answer because the budget has so many different factors in it. So if we're talking about, for instance, the 2024 budget, if staff had been aware that there would be that amount of funding available and had written it in as revenue, it would have, council may recall that the operating increase that was approved was 3.54%. It would have been 2.97%, just on the face of it. However, perhaps one of the other staff members could comment on this. It's not clear to me, or I think to any of us, that just because we were putting extra maintenance into the park, we would have been able to lower the regular park maintenance budget. So it was not clear whether that was to be an additional amount of maintenance or a replacement for the existing maintenance. And if it was to be an additional amount of maintenance, it would not have had any effect on the overall tax rate increase.
Right.
I hope that makes a bit of sense.
Well, I guess the point I was thinking about is that I think the public should know that we're anticipating just with those 3 parks to have raised $500,000 in net revenue that is going to offset some costs in the future. And so essentially that works out, according to the finance department, to be about $33 per household. So we're, effectively people are, in some form, we're going to be able to charge less property tax in the future because of this. So that's only 3 parks, and we're hoping to expand the program. So anyway, I guess my point in all that was that there is an effect, and people, residents here will be, in one way or another, feeling those effects positively in their pocketbook, wallets, if people still carry wallets.
Certainly, any additional source of revenue is a benefit to the district and allows us to provide more and better services.
Right.
So we would certainly be doing that. And council, I think in the future, most other communities with pay parking revenues actually treat them as general revenue. So council may wish to consider that as well.
Right. Okay. when we get millions more. Yes, and so my last question was related to the very last line of the fees and charges bylaw, which is temporary street and laneway occupancy fees are proposed to increase by 24% to reflect actual staff labor costs. The new fee proposed is $260. Now, the way I read it is that this is a fee that people would need to pay for, closing off their laneway or their local street for neighborhood barbecues and things like that, which is in fact something we're trying to promote. So it sounds like a bit of a steep cost to do that. Am I right about that fee?
Your worship, to Councillor Gambioli, actually there is a separate fee for what is called block parties, which I think is
okay.
what you are referring to.
I didn't see that one. Okay.
Yeah, it's the $260 fee for street occupancy signage, I think refers to opportunities for construction projects to take up a bit of the street and so on. And so that fee we felt would be appropriate to actually look at the cost of creating these temporary street bump outs and charge the appropriate fee.
Okay, well, that doesn't sound like a problem to me. Okay, so yeah, I just have had some concerns in the past from people who say that the street occupancy neighborhood barbecue permits are a bit costly, but I haven't heard anything recently, so I guess I'm not going to be too concerned about it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. If we could now move to item 11, I'd ask for a motion. Councillor Lambert, I think, was here, and I know he wanted to make this motion, but I'll ask Councillor Snyder if you would make the appointment of council representative to the Planning Committee.
I'd be pleased to. So I would like to recommend the appointment of the council representative to the Planning Committee, that Councillor Sharon Thompson be appointed to council representative to the Planning Committee for a term ending December 31, 2024.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy. Thank you. Discussion. Thank you, Councillor Thompson, for your willingness to serve. Call the question. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Reports from members of council. Councillor Cassidy.
Well, I just wanted to mention that on July the 1st, the MP from North Vancouver, the MP from West Vancouver, our MLA, and myself in the capacity as acting mayor, because Mayor Sager had another function which he had to attend, that we swore in 40 new Canadians to this country, and it was delightful to see that they came from quite a broad selection of nations. So to them we say welcome, and hopefully they will be very responsible Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you. And I knew a couple of the people there, so wonderful. Councillor Watt.
Yeah, so last week I had the pleasure of welcoming people to the Ferry Building to the Terrain West Coast Views presentation that was representing the work of 12 local artists. And one in particular, really, I just wanted to talk about Margaret Thoma. She is now in her 90s and still very actively painting and just an absolute dynamic individual, and I just can't help but think that, the beautiful scenery and inspiration all around us helps so many of our seniors remain productive and inspired well into old age. And I encourage everybody to get down to the gallery and check it out. It really is a wonderful exhibition.
Thanks very much. Councillor Snyder, could I ask you to make a motion to receive the reports?
So moved.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Thompson. Thank you. Call a question. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Any member of the public who wishes to address a question? Hearing none, could I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Cassidy.
I recommend that the July 8, 2024 regular council meeting be adjourned.
Thank you. Councillor Watt.
I'll second that.
Question. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Thanks very much. See you all in 2 weeks.